Our story begins at Balnagown Castle, a grand Scottish fortress nestled among the wild, wind-swept highlands. Its ancient stone walls have stood for centuries, bearing silent witness to the triumphs and tragedies of generations past. This imposing estate is the ancestral home of the Ross clan, a family whose roots run deep in Scottish soil and whose legacy is woven into the very fabric of the land. In 1872, within these storied halls, Charles Henry Augustus Frederick Lockhart Ross was born. From his first breath, he was destined for greatness, fated to become Sir Charles Ross, the 9th Baronet of Balnagown. Though his lineage was ancient and noble, Charles's upbringing was profoundly shaped by his mother, Rebecca Sophia Barnes, a formidable American heiress whose ambition matched her wealth. The union of Scottish tradition and American fortune created a unique, sometimes uneasy atmosphere in the castle. Charles grew up surrounded by both the grandeur of his ancestors and the bold modern influence of his mother's homeland. Balnagown Castle was more than just a home. It was a symbol of power, history, and the immense responsibility that came with the Ross name. Its towers loomed over the estate, a constant reminder of the family's storied past. As the sole heir, Charles was the center of his mother's world. Yet Rebecca managed the estate with an iron grip, overseeing every detail and leaving little room for her son's independence. Every stone corridor and rolling acre reminded Charles of the duty that awaited him. The pressure to live up to his family's name was ever present, shaping his childhood and his dreams. Rebecca's protective instincts often bordered on controlling. She made all decisions about the land, the family's fortune, and even Charles's future, determined to secure the Ross legacy at any cost. While Charles enjoyed every material comfort imaginable, he grew up under the shadow of his mother's strict authority, his every move watched and guided. This dynamic set the stage for a future conflict, a battle of wills between a mother unwilling to relinquish control and a son desperate to claim his birthright and forge his own path. Charles's dual heritage would shape his life in profound ways. Pulling him between the weight of old world tradition and the promise of new world ambition, he was caught between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. The castle's grandeur was both a playground for a privileged child and a cage that confined his spirit, its walls echoing with both opportunity and restraint. The story of Sir Charles Ross begins with privilege, pressure, and a legacy that would define and ultimately haunt him, setting the stage for a life marked by ambition, conflict, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. Like many aristocrats, Charles was sent to Eton College, where he learned the ways of a gentleman among Britain's elite. After Eton, he attended Trinity College, Cambridge, where academic pursuits competed with the temptations of wealth and freedom. His mother ensured he had an enormous allowance, setting him apart even among the privileged. Charles lived in luxury, indulging in extravagant hobbies and pleasures. This lifestyle, funded by his mother, created a paradox. He was groomed for responsibility but encouraged to break the rules. The habits and experiences he formed at Eton and Cambridge, brilliant, adventurous and reckless, would shape his future. He was a product of the British class system, yet his financial freedom let him live outside its boundaries. Charles' education was less about scholarship and more about learning how to navigate, and sometimes defy, the world of privilege. At 21, Charles was legally entitled to his inheritance and control of Balnagown, but his mother Rebecca refused to step aside, believing him too reckless for such responsibility. The result was a sensational lawsuit. Charles took his own mother to court, shocking Victorian society. Newspapers feasted on the drama of a baronet suing his heiress mother. Charles argued he was the rightful heir. Rebecca claimed she was protecting the family legacy. The court sided with Charles, forcing Rebecca to hand over the estate and fortune. It was a legal victory, but the cost was personal. Their relationship was shattered. Charles had won his freedom, but at the price of family. This public battle revealed his determination and willingness to fight for what he believed was his. The scars of this conflict would never fully heal. At Cambridge, Charles proved himself a formidable athlete, excelling not just in academics, but in the physical challenges that defined the university's spirit. He rode in the legendary boat race against Oxford, a grueling contest that demanded teamwork, endurance, and unwavering focus. Yet his true passion was marksmanship. He became obsessed with the science and precision of shooting, fascinated by the mechanics and discipline it required. He spent countless hours perfecting his aim, studying ballistics and pushing himself to achieve ever greater accuracy. For Charles, shooting was more than a gentleman's pastime. It became a personal quest for mastery, a test of patience and nerve. This obsession soon led him to the world of big game hunting, where the stakes and the dangers were far higher. He traveled to Africa and beyond, venturing into untamed wilderness to test his skills against some of the world's most dangerous animals. Charles quickly gained a reputation as a fearless hunter and expert marksman, admired by peers and envied by rivals. These pursuits revealed his character, restless, ambitious, and always striving for perfection. Rowing showed his discipline, shooting his meticulous mind, and hunting his unquenchable thirst for adventure and risk. Each challenge he faced was a step towards something greater, a way to test his limits and discover new strengths. He was not a typical aristocrat. He stood apart, driven by a restless energy and a desire to carve his own path. Charles was training for a life of action, invention, and danger, always seeking new frontiers to conquer. The skills he honed, discipline, precision, courage, would soon define his future as both a soldier and an inventor. For Charles Ross, life was a series of challenges, and he was always searching for the next one, never content to stand still. The Second Boer War called Charles to military service, where he saw firsthand the limitations of the British Lee-Enfield rifle. Drawing on his experience as a marksman and inventor, he set out to design a better weapon. He invested his fortune in creating a state-of-the-art straight-pull bolt-action rifle, faster and more accurate than its rivals. Charles became obsessed, refining every detail to achieve perfection. The result was the Ross rifle, a testament to his ambition and engineering genius. This project marked his transformation from soldier to inventor. He poured years and resources into the rifle, determined to revolutionize military firearms. The Ross rifle was more than a weapon. It was the embodiment of Charles's relentless pursuit of innovation. His drive to improve what others accepted as good enough set him apart. The birth of the Ross rifle would define his legacy and his greatest controversy. The British military wasn't interested in the Ross rifle, but Canada was. At the turn of the 20th century, Canada was eager to modernize its armed forces and saw potential in Charles Ross's innovative design. In 1903, Charles traveled to Canada, impressing officials with his rifle's accuracy and reliability. His demonstrations won over military leaders, and he soon secured a major contract to supply rifles for the Canadian Army. He built the Ross Rifle Company in Quebec City, establishing himself as a major industrialist and bringing new jobs and technology to the region. Charles became a key figure in Canada, helping build the nation's arms industry and advising the government on military and industrial matters. His ambitions didn't stop at rifles. He built a hydroelectric plant, supplying power to Quebec and showcasing his engineering vision. This project helped fuel the city's growth and modernization. Charles was a true entrepreneur, always seeking new ventures and pushing the boundaries of what was possible in industry and technology. His influence in Canada grew, blending business, innovation, and adventure. He became known for his bold ideas and willingness to take risks. He spent much of his time there, overseeing his empire and enjoying the vast Canadian wilderness, which inspired many of his pursuits. The Canadian chapter of his life brought him wealth, power, and a reputation as a brilliant, if controversial, innovator. He was both admired and criticized for his relentless drive. Canada became his stage for grand ambitions, far from the constraints of British tradition. Here, he could shape his own legacy. Sir Charles Ross was now a transatlantic force, his name known on both sides of the ocean as a symbol of innovation and daring enterprise. The Ross rifle excelled in controlled conditions, winning prestigious shooting awards and earning praise from snipers. But in the trenches of World War I, its flaws became deadly. The straight-pull mechanism jammed in mud and dirt, leaving soldiers defenseless. Worse, a design flaw meant the bolt could be reassembled incorrectly, causing horrific injuries. Soldiers lost faith, discarding Ross rifles for the more reliable Lee-Enfield. By 1916, the Canadian Army withdrew the Ross rifle from service, a humiliating end for Charles's invention. It remained a favorite for snipers, but its legacy as a standard weapon was one of failure. For Charles, it was a bitter blow, his greatest creation now synonymous with tragedy. The project that defined his ambition became a cautionary tale of innovation gone awry. The Ross rifle's story was one of brilliance and heartbreak. Balnagown Estate was Charles's private kingdom, over 300,000 acres of Scottish wilderness. He invested heavily, transforming it into a sanctuary for hunting and grandeur, but post-war taxes threatened his fortune and the estate's future. In a bold move, Charles declared Balnagown sovereign American territory, citing his mother's citizenship and her financial contributions. He raised the American flag and dared British tax collectors to enter. The claim was legally meaningless, but it captured headlines and cemented his reputation as an eccentric rebel. The British government ignored his declaration and the tax battle dragged on. Charles's audacious act was a defiant stand against authority. He was a man who made his own rules, even if no one else recognized them. Charles's personal life was as tumultuous as his business ventures. He married 3 times, seeking stability, but often finding turmoil. His only son, meant to inherit the baronetcy, was killed in World War I, a devastating loss that ended the direct Ross line. After his second wife's death, Charles married his American secretary, Dorothy, in his later years. He spent his final years in the United States, far from Balnagown. In 1942, Charles Ross died in Florida, and the ancient baronetcy became extinct. Balnagown Castle fell into neglect, its future uncertain. Decades later, Muhammad Al-Fayed restored the estate, preserving its legacy. The story of Sir Charles Ross ended in loss, but his legend and his castle endured. He remains a symbol of brilliance, rebellion, and the price of ambition.